power. It does the body good.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Chapter 38 of The Shadow Rising. Hidden Faces. And our symbol is the Black Ajah symbol? The one that I never know what to call. It's the opposing black and white faces facing each other.
Yeah, I just call it the Black Ajah.
That's better, because it's not meant to be a racial thing, but if you say it the way I'm trying to say it, it sounds like a racial thing.
I know you always hesitate when you're saying it. You're like, the black and white, and you're like, no, but that's not what I mean. It's just the inky black and paper white.
Yin-yang faces. I like that, Ned.
But they're not. But then they'd be upside down and opposing in a circle. This is totally like mirrored. I almost call it inverted faces.
That is better than saying black and white. And yes, obscure, like the mirror and vase thing.
So welcome to Tanchico and all the bad guys who are hanging out there.
The Garden of Silver Breezes was not a garden at all, but a huge wine shop. Much too large to be called a shop, really. Atop a hill centered on the Calpine, the westernmost of Tanchico's 3 peninsulas below the Great Circle. A part of the name, at least, came from the breezes that wafted in where polished green-streaked marble columns and balustrades replaced one wall except on the topmost floor. Golden oiled silk curtains could be lowered in case of rain. The hill fell away sharply on that side, and the tables along the balustrades gave a clear view, across white domes and spires, of the great harbor, crowded with more ships than ever. Tanchico needed everything, desperately, and there was gold to be made, until the gold and time ran out. With its gilded lamps and ceilings inlaid with brass fretwork, polished to a golden gleam, its serving women and men chosen for grace and beauty and discretion, the Garden of the Silver Breezes had been the most expensive wine shop in the city even before the Troubles. Now it was outrageous. But those who dealt in huge sums still came, those who dealt in power and influence, or thought they did. In some ways, there was less to deal in than before, in others, more. Low walls surrounded each table, making islands that dotted across the green and golden floor tiles. Each wall, pierced with lacy carving, so no eavesdropper could listen unseen, stood just high enough to hide those who met from the casual glances of passer-by. Even so, patrons usually went masked, especially of late, and some had a bodyguard beside their table, also masked, to avoid recognition if the patron was prudent, and tongueless, rumor said, for the most prudent. No guard was visibly armed. The proprietress of the Garden of Silver Breezes, a sleek woman of indeterminate age named Liandrin, allowed no weapons past the street now. Her rule was not broken, at least not openly. From her usual table against the balustrade, Egeanin watched the ships in the harbor, especially those under sail. They made her want to be back on a deck giving orders. She had never expected duty to bring her to this. Unconsciously, she adjusted the velvet mask that hid the upper half of her face. She felt ridiculous wearing the thing, but it was necessary to blend in to some extent. The mask, blue to match her high-necked silk gown, the gown itself, and her dark hair, grown down to her shoulders now, were as far as she could make herself go. Passing for a Tarabonner was unnecessary. Tanchico bulged with refugees, a good many of them foreigners, swept up in the Troubles, and it was beyond her in any case. These people were animals. They had no discipline, no order. It was a bit of a long one, but I figured I'd leave it there.
There's a lot of description here as we enter the city of Tanchico. Do you want to talk about the map there at all? Because we get a map here, which is always fun to look at.
Oh yeah, right after we get our kind of detailed map of Tanchico. 3 peninsulas jutting out into a kind of bay.
It's a bay.
I guess you would say.
One thing I noticed about this map, north is to the left.
Yeah, I don't like that it's set that way either, but it does make sense to me.
So technically the bottom of this map is the Erith Ocean. That's the Western Ocean that we see off to the left of the main map in the front of the book. So those 3 peninsulas actually go north to south.
Right. I don't really have any other analysis on the map.
Just that I think we see these great circles, and I think we learn their racetracks.
Oh.
They love racing in Tanchico. right?
Yeah, I think that's a thing. Chariot races or something like that.
So we get introduced to Egeanin, who's hanging out in Tanchico looking for former Sul'dam who have perhaps not returned to the fold.
Right, and we'll see this a bit during the conversation that happens between Egeanin and Gelb, who is a person we hear from again later.
And we heard from before as well.
Oh, yeah.
He was on Bail Domon's ship, and Matt, when they jumped on, was it Matt or Rand who kicked him in the forehead?
Oh my god, that's right.
So that's way, way back in the day when they're fleeing Shadar Logoth, like way back early in the day when they first meet Bail Domon. Floran Gelb is, hanging out on the boat, and I think he's asleep on watch.
We'll hear from him again later, but essentially what's happening, at least in this scene, because it seems like Egeanin is up to a couple of different things, but she's looking for the Sul'dam, who never returned after Falma because it was discovered that they could discovered that they could channel, so they did not want to return or were left behind.
But weren't there like two of them who were collared by the girls in their escape?
Yes.
And I think, aren't they the ones that Egeanin is looking for?
Yes, I believe that's right.
Rena and Sita is what people are saying?
In this scene, Gelb is delivering collars that he's found, the Adams.
Yes.
But it seems that he's also tasked with retrieving the women, who I assume one of which is Egwene.
Yeah, absolutely, because she would be one of the missing Domani.
Right, and one of the more valuable ones as well.
Right.
I figure that's why they're looking for her.
I imagine the collars can be left behind for lots of different reasons, because, I imagine they have extra collars sitting around just in case they encounter women who can channel. They probably have lots of them in lots of places. So, I imagine that these collars didn't specifically come off of anyone in particular. They just got left behind when the Seanchan had to pull out quickly because of what happened in the Great Hunt.
Yeah, I can't say exactly why Egeanin is interested specifically in the collars. One reason might be so that they can't be copied and then used against the Seanchan, but also probably, at least to begin the search for the women she's looking for, it would be important to find, the things that they were wearing.
That's true. Or just have some in hand so that she could then capture women when she found them.
That very well may be true, too. We know it's very rare that Domani can be trained to make these things, because they have to have this special Angreal-making talent, or Terangreal-making talent.
Right. The only person who we actually see who can make them is Elaine.
Yeah.
And she does a pretty good job. But there must be other channelers in Seanchan that are capable of copying them, obviously. And probably it's one of the first skills they try and teach them, because it's the most valuable thing in terms of duplicating their own group of channelers under slavery. They need more collars. Yeah.
And Cody, I really like that analogy that Cody just put in Discord. It's like classified military technology. This is why, those famous photos from Vietnam when the American troops were leaving, the troops were dropping helicopters into the ocean and blowing up their equipment that they couldn't take with them, because otherwise you're giving them to the enemy, which you could look at the Adam that way too, as military technology. Can't just leave those laying around for anyone to use.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that you don't. And we also know that she's getting a bunch of money and orders from just offshore, where we know the Seanchan have retreated to just offshore, and they're waiting to come back again. And they're prepping the way with her with these orders. They're basically trying to mop up after themselves, I think, so they can come again unknown.
I would say that's correct, yeah. Also collect whatever resources they lost.
Exactly.
Some of them. Floran Gelb, a narrow-faced fellow with a weasel's greedy smile. How well written.
And a dent on his forehead.
I can't remember who kicked him in the face. I want to say it was Rand.
I'm going to agree with that. I don't think it was Matt, because Rand was the one who jumped on first. Sakan agrees with us.
Okay, well, that's 3. Mackenzie also agrees.
We have a consensus.
We'll go with that. Gelb presents one Adam, which he has found. Egeanin's pleas. I'm just running through the conversation here.
I mean, we find out that not only is he seeking Adam, he's also seeking the women, the Sul'dam, escaped Sul'dam, and possibly, she calls them Sul'dam. She doesn't say Domani.
Yeah, not sure. She's probably looking for the collared Sul'dam and Egwene, Nynaeve, Min, the whole group that was there.
I don't think so. I don't think she's looking for the whole group, because she's not a dark friend. She wouldn't even know about them. She's just looking for the escaped, legitimate Sul'dam.
Oh, I guess so. She doesn't know about them.
That's the whole reason she becomes friends with them, is the Gelb makes a mistake and jumps the Supergirls by mistake. And she's like, goes to apologize and then finds out they're Aes Sedai and then like wants to know more. And like, but the whole point is it was a case of mistaken identity. Gelb mistakes Nynaeve for one of the women that Egeanin is looking for. And so Gelb actually reunites Egeanin and the girls for the first time, or unites them for the first time.
And eventually, Bail Domon with Egeanin.
Draconic Entity is pointing out that on the boat was actually was the second time that Rand channeled, because that's when he caused the boom to swing and knocked the Trolloc off right when it was about to stab him.
Oh, right.
The first one was the helping Bella. Third one was channeling in the jail. Well, the hotel room where they were trapped. The inn.
Oh, right. You know, I noticed here, I really want to point this out before I forget, that as Gelb and Egeanin are having this conversation, we find out that Gelb is looking for the Adam and the women, and he's already kidnapped at least one woman and tried to, but it was not the correct woman. And here, it's just this line. I'll just read it really quick. In his defense, the Lady Lelwyn closely matched one of the women Egeanin sought, but she had told him they would not speak with any accent he recognized, and certainly not a Tarabonner accent. And isn't that what Egeanin is renamed later?
I was absolutely going to point that out. This is where she gets the name Llewellyn that she takes. It's initially just a cover name, so she must pick it thinking back on this moment. And then when Tuon renames her, she says, I will name you, she takes her fake name and adds Shipless to it.
Llewellyn Shipless.
Yeah.
So she's named after the woman whose life she destroyed. So, and
yes.
I want to say, so Gelb kidnaps this woman named Lady Lelwyn. Lelwyn is presented to Egeanin. Egeanin's like, this isn't one of the people I was looking for. What the fuck is wrong with you? And then she's like, well, it's a waste to just, I can't release her or she'll blow her cover. I shouldn't kill her because, she's pretty. It's a waste is what she thinks. So she sends her off to become a slave somewhere on the Seanchan continent. So I just thought it comes full circle when she's named after the woman whose life she destroyed.
I was going to say that almost word for word. You took it right out of my mouth.
I never even noticed that before.
That was a first for me as well. But I noticed that on this, and I was like, I had it highlighted in like a different color and everything, and I was like, holy crap, look at this, Mistress Llewellyn. Like, this is where she gets the name.
After the woman she sells into slavery.
Yep.
That's crazy.
She basically takes her identity and becomes that woman in this society.
You kind of highlighted when Gelb says, where are you from, Mistress Eladar? Obviously a pseudonym. And, of course, Egeanin doesn't answer. It's like, I can't place your accent, he says. Bail Domon walks by it while she's leaving. She knows who he is, or knows his reputation, at least.
Well, she captured him, remember? She took him into custody. That's why she's like, oh, crap, I hope he doesn't recognize me. But she's got a mask on, fortunately. But the whole reason she remembers him, and he definitely remembers her, is she like smacked him around a little bit for not like obeying. So yeah, they remember,
and they get together happily later. So,
well, I don't know if you'd say happily, but they do get together later. I'm not sure either of them could be called like, they seem content with the situation and they seem to like each other, but neither one of them are like happy people.
Well, they're not happy times either, as things get crazier and crazier as the books go on. Carridin shows up,
aka Bors, our dark friend White Cloak, who's been, remember the background on him, he's been stationed there by both Padron Nile and one of the Forsaken. We think it was Ishmael.
I believe so, yes.
Because that's from the Dark Friend Social, where he was given his orders. And his orders by Ishmael was kill Rand al'Thor, and for every month you don't, the Murdral is going to take one of your family.
Right, and he still hasn't rescinded that order, I noticed.
Because he's dead.
So that's a good reason.
Yeah. Like, the Murdral is just doing what it does, you know? And then he's been ordered by Patron Nile to keep him alive, and we saw him do the whole "you made a dog's dinner of it" scene. Or is that later? Again, I'm getting confused.
I think that's a little later.
They're giving him these contradicting orders about Rand al'Thor, but Rand isn't even on the plane. He's in the waste this whole time. So,
yeah, he hasn't been there for months.
Yeah. And so he's freaking out because he's like, well, I'm going to be dead because I can't find this guy to kill him.
Yeah.
And he gets news about his family dying one by one.
Oh, also your Jaichim, however we say that, Jaichim Carridin theory from like maybe a month back or so when we were talking about this, slowly becoming an alcoholic as the stress comes on more and more. It's like notable in this chapter that he like walks into a room and all he can look at is like the brandy on his table and he's just wants to get wasted. Wait, it was Carridin, right? You were talking about slowly descending into alcoholism?
I actually think it was Bornhold.
Oh, Bornhold, damn it. Never mind.
But Carridin always likes his brandy. That's how he dies, is they drown him in it.
Oh, right.
Millie Skane pours it down his throat.
Yeah.
Staples his head to a board.
Good old Millie Skane.
Millie Skane. Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why the White Cloaks kind of blend together sometimes. It's like they kind of have the same prejudices and behaviors, and yeah, as Seanchan says, you've seen one alcoholic White Cloak, you've seen them all.
I mean, I can only imagine having to work that job day in and day out. I'd be drinking a lot more too.
God, can you imagine just thinking everyone around you is a dark friend constantly? You just be like, just an asshole.
Shots for the glory of the light.
White Cloaks are the ultimate incels? Is that what we're going with?
Ooh. Gnarly.
Nobody wants to fuck them.
But Jaichim Carridin is just walking by in the same building as Egeanin and Domon are in. They're both just there, not for related reasons. She just sees them and knows who they are.
And he's the bully power in Tanchico. No one else. I mean, the city is basically, a capital, but it's totally doesn't have the power of anyone around it. So, it only has the soldiers it has, which is not very many. So in comes Jaichim Carridin with the only real force anywhere around. And he gets to bully the city around and, throw his weight around and do whatever he wants, which he doesn't really care about because all he's looking for is Rand al'Thor.
And on our way out of Egeanin's perspective here, I only wanted to note, I think, as Egeanin looks out of her palanquin, as she's being carried down the street, she notices worn faces, worn clothes, two bright, frenzied eyes, desperate, hoping when they knew there was no hope. And that's just kind of highlighting the really bad situation for the common people of Terabon.
They do comment that when the Seanchan finally do settle in, it's way better for the common people, for the structure and the trade, and they feed the people and put them to work, and it's like, it's a little bit of a communist utopia. Well, maybe not communist, dictatorship?
Yeah, like an autocratic, like more like fascist utopia.
Yeah, hard to can you use those two words together?
Where like the state is the economy? I mean, sure, why not? If you could put one person in charge of everything and everything just worked, or, in this case, it's the privilege of the blood and only the blood, we see in a moment, to feed the poor. It's something that they're only allowed to do, and it's something that's like, if you have a lot of status in this society, you run soup kitchens and give out alms and things of that nature. Your people are yours, you own them, and so you take care of your property.
It feels very much like a Roman society which went out and conquered other societies, but then integrated them and often let them rule with whatever existing council or group they had in place, and would oftentimes do things like integrate their religion into Christianity in order to make them more comfortable. Hence why, Jesus Christ happened to be born on the pagan holiday of the equinox.
Yeah, sure. There's a ton of that out there.
Yeah, I just think like ruling over and adapting cultures into yourself is something that a ruling culture that expands can do and do well. Yeah, okay. Valda set up Omirna though to kill Niall. Omirna definitely held the sword, but Valda was the one who set him up to do it. And Valda was right there, ready to stab Omirna in the back, and so he could claim treason and cover up his own crime. So I consider Valda the one who killed Niall, even though technically Omirna held the sword. Just a technicality.
Jaichim Carridin lounged in his chair, cloak spread over the carved arms, studying the Tarabonner noblemen who occupied the private room's other chairs. They sat stiffly in their gold-embroidered coats, mouths tight below masks fancifully worked to resemble hawks' faces, and lions' and leopards. He had more to worry about him than they, but he managed a calm demeanor. It was 2 months since he had received word of a cousin found skinned alive in his own bedchamber. 3 since his younger sister, Dielda, being carried off from her bridal feast by a murdrawl. The family steward wrote disbelievingly, frantic with all the tragedy befalling House Carridin. 2 months. He hoped Dielda had died quickly. It was said women did not cling to sanity long in murdrawl hands. 2 whole months. Anyone else but Jaichim Carridin would have been sweating blood. Each man held a golden goblet of wine, but there were no servants present. Liandrin had served them before removing herself, with an assurance they would not be disturbed. There was, in fact, no one else on this, the highest floor, of the Garden of Silver Breezes. 2 men had come with the nobles. Members of the king's lifeguard, unless Carridin missed his guess, stood at the foot of the stairs to guarantee continued privacy. Carridin sipped his wine. None of the Tarabonners had touched theirs. So, he said lightly, King Andric wishes the Children of the Light to aid in restoring order in the city. We don't often let ourselves become involved in the internal affairs of nations. Not openly, he notes to himself. Certainly I cannot remember such a request. I do not know what the Lord Captain Commander will say. Pedron Niall would say to do what was needed to make sure the Tarabonners knew that they owed a debt to the children, make sure they paid it in full. There is no time for you to request instructions from Amador, a man in black-spotted leopard mask said urgently. None had offered names. Carridin did not need them.
So one of those guys is King Andric himself.
Right.
And he's trying to get his beau, his girl, installed as the Panarch, who we later know becomes Julian's honey. So this power play is all about getting Julian's honey in as this is Amathera.
Yeah, and so we get like an overview in this scene of some of the politics happening in Tarabon and how the Panarch and the king are interdependent pieces of the government. So they're, kind of like a leader of Congress and a leader of the federal government in the United States, I guess.
But it seems like Ulrich killed the last one. Sorry, I keep saying Ulrich. Andric killed the last one in order to get his girl installed this time.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, we see a lot of this happening. We get mentions of the dragon sworn running around in the countryside, which is maybe the first time we've heard about. Well, not the first time we've heard about that, but they're becoming a plot line that's happening.
I mean, we've known ever since the beginning of the Dragon Reborn, when they're up in the mountains, there were all these groups of dragons sworn on the plain, and he always wanted to go down to one of them.
Right.
And then she kept saying, no, you can't, and he's like, fine, then I'm going to go get Kalendor. And then from there, he's headed off to the Waste. So everyone thinks he's still on the plain somewhere, but he's been heading in the opposite direction. And news hasn't gotten back yet that he's shown up and taken the sword. Seems like someone would have like said something to him.
I don't know. I guess, these people are living out in the sticks somewhere, so maybe they don't hear all the rumors.
It's a big continent. And I guess, actually, now that I think about it, it's maybe been like, a month, maybe 5 weeks since Rand sees the sword in book time. So, because he was spent like a month, maybe.
That's about right, yeah.
In the stone, and then he spent like another 10 days in Rudian. So, assuming this is real time, we're actually not talking like that big of a length of time since he sees the sword. So, it makes sense that they wouldn't have heard yet.
And I don't know if you have anything else to say about the next couple of pages. I don't have terribly much here, like other than like what we were saying, all the politics that are happening around this, the fact that Carridin knows who these men are, even though they have masks on, speaks a lot to him and his abilities. But they make their agreement.
Yeah, just that they're gonna get her in there, and as soon as she gets in there, the Black Ajah show up and start torturing her in order to keep them busy while they look for the collar. So she sort of gets power for like half a second, and then she's like terrified and gets pulled out of there and becomes Julian's honey, and then she becomes from Amathera to just Thera, and then it's just she becomes this sort of minor character. And we do hear about how easy it is for nobles to go back to commoners and vice versa. This is one of those situations.
Of course, after the talk of the Dragonsworn, Carridin's like, where is this Rand al'Thor that all these Dragonsworn are running around following, apparently? I can't manage to find him somehow. How is that possible? It's because they've never met. The group of Dragonsworn and Rand.
Where is he? He's back in his home?
Yes, he's back in the place where he's staying.
the one he seized from the rebellious, in quotes, guy,
yes.
Noble. Oh, you rebelled? Head on a pike. Oh, now I get your house.
And apparently, I think it's out front somewhere in front of the house.
So I'm actually, did Carridin kill this guy for the house? That was my question. Or did he die because he was a rebel and then Carridin just took the house because it was available?
I don't really understand what this means here.
Which part?
The owner of this ornate mass of pale domes and lacy spires and shaded gardens had put forward a claim to the throne of the light, and no one complained at the occupation, least of all the owner. What was left of his head still adorned a spike above the trader's steps.
So the throne of the light, isn't that what they call King Aldric's throne? Alron. Sorry, why do I keep getting that wrong? So
wait, is he messing with you? I think he might be messing with you.
Damn you. So anyway, I think he was a claimant for the throne up against the current king.
Now Discord's just suggesting names. It's Andric. So I guess put forward a claim against Andric to take the throne from him, and then Carridin kills the guy, takes his house, and then also gets himself a solid ally, this Andric.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I'm going to do this read-in. So that's where he's staying. This palace could match the finest in Amadisha, if not the largest. Yet, foremost in his mind right then was the strong brandy in the room he had taken for a study. He was halfway across a priceless carpet, all patterned blue and scarlet and gold, eyes fixed on the carved cabinet that held a silver flask of double-distilled brandy, when suddenly he realized he was not alone. A woman in a clinging pale red gown stood near the tall, narrow windows overlooking one of the tree-shaded gardens, her honey-colored hair in braids that brushed her shoulders. A misty scrap of veil did nothing to hide her face. Young and pretty, with a rosebud mouth and large brown eyes, she was no servant, not dressed like that. "Who are you?" he demanded irritably. "How did you get here? Leave at once, or I'll have you tossed into the street." "Threat spores? You should be more welcoming to a guest, yes?" That name jolted him to his heels. Before he thought, he had his sword out, lunging for her throat. Something seized him. The air turned to crawling jelly. Something forced him to his knees, encased him from the neck down. It tightened around his wrist until bones grated. His hands popped open, and his sword fell. The power. She was using the one power on him. A Tarvalin witch, and if she knew that name... "Do you remember," she said, coming closer, "a meeting where Baalzamon himself appeared and showed us the faces of Matrin Cawthon, Perrin Ibarra, and Rand al'Thor?" She practically spat the names, especially the last. Her eyes could have drilled holes in steel. "You see? I know who you are, yes? You pledged your soul to the great Lord of the Dark, Bors." Her sudden laugh was a tinkling of bells.
"You were at the Dark Friend Social. We saw you." And this scene is how we know that Liandrin was one of the two Aes Sedai at the Dark Friend Social. We think the other one may have been Varen. Did we ever really pin down who the other one was?
We haven't still.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever confirmed in a way that's irrefutable.
Alviarin is also a very good possibility.
I agree, Xenophon. I love that Liandrin's laugh is described as a tinkling of bells. I'm using his words, or her words, I'm not sure. It's so incongruous, making him believe she's about to kill him and kind of has a tinkling laugh about it. Tee-hee-hee.
So meanwhile, she's there totally unrelated to his previous orders. Like, she doesn't even know about them.
Right. And doesn't care.
And so, no, and doesn't care. And he's like, I promise I'll kill him. And she's like, whatever. I thought we were supposed to keep him alive. Okay, whatever.
She's like, oh, good. Yes, go forward with that. But here's what I want you to do today.
Right. Because they've learned that whatever they're seeking, how do they know that the collar and the side bracelets are in the palace? That's my question.
That's a good question. They have their brown members on it, looking for where it would be. But somehow, yeah, they have a hint of where it should be. They just don't know exactly. Because in the following scene, the scene after this maybe, Liandrin is in the house with some of the Black Ajah members. And they discuss it. That they've narrowed it down, basically, that this thing, it's a terangrial of some kind, and it should be located in this or one other place, both of which are in the palace.
It was all book research by the Browns.
I think.
That makes sense, based on what I remember from that scene.
Nin seems to think they find it in Teleran Riyadh.
The Supergirl, our girls do. I don't think the Black Ajah does.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
So Nynaeve actually sees Moghedien messing with it, because Moghedien has cast a spell hiding the seal, which is sitting next to the sad bracelets.
Nodding. I don't say that very much anymore.
And we'll see Moghedien here soon in the next chapter. She's keeping an eye on the Black Ajah. Don't know if you got that.
I didn't catch that. So we have this scene with Liandrin and Carridin, and she basically just says she wants him to use his couple hundred men to seize the Panarch's palace.
And then he's going to go in, seize the palace, and then kick out all of the Panarch's guards so that Black Ajah can search it from top to bottom for the sad bracelets.
Right. Andric is screwed, but so is Carridin.
Basically.
He tries to explain to her, like, listen, I can do that, but then we're all going to die. This guy has troops too, but she doesn't care.
No. And she says, I'll deal with the Panarch, because basically she's going to torture. You know, that's where we see the whole thing where they're making her, like, sing dirty songs in her dreams and eat ice white peppers, and they're basically torturing her to make her compliant.
Right.
And so they're doing that so that she can't order the troops to throw out the White Cloaks. And so that whole scene of her being tortured is basically set up here, where Carridin's like, I can't deal with these troops, and she thinks for a second, and it's like, we'll deal with her. That's how they deal with her.
I have a bit of a read for Liandrin I'll do here. It's just her being pure evil.
What an evil bitch. What ends up happening to Liandrin? Do you know off the top of your head?
Does she get collared?
Because she deserves, like, the worst fate.
Xenophon says imprisoned by Moghedien. Yeah, Mackenzie says Dakavel to Suroth. I thought that was right.
It's not a good fate. She doesn't get an easy death. She gets a terrible life. And being as she can channel, probably a long life. So it looks like she gets captured and shielded by Moghedien, and then handed over to Suroth, who then ties her off. Oh yeah, she tries to use compulsion on Moghedien, which is just, terrible.
Awful stuff.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
She deserves every minute of it.
Liandrin ghosted through the halls, easily avoiding servants and white cloaks. When she stepped out of a small back door into a narrow alley behind the palace, the tall young guard there stared at her with a blend of relief and unease. Her little trick of opening someone to her suggestions, just a whip-crack trickle of the power, had not been needed with Carridin, but it had easily convinced this fool that she should be allowed in. Smiling, she motioned him to bend closer. The lanky lout grinned as if expecting a kiss, a grin that froze as her narrow blade went through his eye. She leapt nimbly back as he fell. A boneless sack of flesh. He would not speak of her even by accident now. Not so much as a spot of blood stained her hand. She wished she had Chesmel's skill at killing with the power, or even Rihanna's lesser talent. Strange that the ability to kill with the power, to stop a heart or boil blood in the veins, should be so closely linked to healing. She herself could not heal much more than scrapes and bruises. Not that she had any interest in it.
I think it makes a lot of sense that they're tied close together. You can start a heart, you can stop a heart. Those if you understand how a body works, it's easy to disrupt how a body works.
Yeah. Who better to sabotage a car than a mechanic?
Power, it does the body good. The one power. Or bad, either way.
Liandrin kind of goes over in her mind that they were given this palace by a merchant who presumably owns it, and he furnished it with a few servants who are all dark friends. So he says, anyway.
I assume when she says given, she ordered him to give it to her, and since she stands higher, he had to because of his oaths. So not necessarily willing to give, but you do what you have to.
And we see there's a small gathering of some of the Black Ajah members that broke away from the tower.
She talks about avoiding Susan Sanchez pets. Do you think she means our three girls?
Swan Sanchez? Yes.
Yeah.
You said Susan.
Suan. Susan Sanchez. I'll do it. I'll make that mistake every time.
Oh, I called her Sue my entire first two read-throughs. Because that's so many vowels.
Yeah, your mind just skips over a couple of them.
It's like Suiane. It's like, what? Suiani?
Yeah, I think that was my initial pronunciation.
Like, your new name's Sue.
Yeah. I think I went with, Susan.
Meet her old friend, Nin. That's totally my first couple of read-throughs. It was Nin, Sue, Min's easy, obviously. There's a bunch of difficult ones that I just shortened to the first syllable.
Egg.
Egeanin.
The problem was when I would shorten two names to the same name, and then that's when I always ran into troubles, because I'd be like, wait, which character is this again? M-O-G or M-O-T?
Nin and Min.
Yeah.
So about a quarter of the original kind of 13 are here, Black Ajah members that stole the Terengriel. They talk about a bunch of different stuff, but basically just kind of laying out their plans to...
So you missed Moghedien. The spider is hiding in...
Is Moghedien the servant?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, no, she's totally there keeping an eye on the Black Ajah and giving them orders.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about now. It's the impudent servant.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find her name.
Gliden.
Oh, yeah, or Gildan.
Gildan, yeah.
I had no idea.
That's why she's always, like, uppity and, and she's like, you're not acting like a servant. Well, yeah, because she's a Forsaken.
That's so funny. I had no idea. Liandrin walks in and just starts yelling questions at her. She's like, where are all the others? And Gildan's like, they're over there in the withdrawing room. Liandrin's like pissed that she's not like ma'am or whatever.
Yeah, later when Liandrin finds out that Moghedien's was guiled in, she's like, oh my god, I just sent you to be beaten all those times. She's like, don't worry, no one beat me. And I didn't do any of that work. I just made everyone think I did the work.
Yeah, they're talking about how to kill the Forsaken that are slowly crushing them in between all their plans. And
so, I mean, just remember they're saying all of this right in front of a Forsaken.
Talk about using balefire and that they have a Terengriel to do it, and then Gildan kind of wanders into the room and she's just like dusting right next to them. Liandrin's like, what the hell are you doing here? She's like, you told me to clean. I'm over here dusting.
I wonder if part of the reason that they didn't notice her is because she was using some like, vague inverted compulsion weave on them to like, or not necessarily compulsion, but like, don't notice me weave. And you could just get a bunch of really, like, callous interaction between these women. Just like, oh, yes, I would kill the librarian if only they were, their system wasn't so complicated. And it's like, oh, the only reason you don't kill somebody is because they're useful to you? That's not good.
This might be boring to some people, but I listened to, I forget which podcast it was on, but I listened to a thing on the Dewey Decimal System recently and how it like revolutionized libraries. And this made me think of that, because apparently before the Dewey Decimal System, Basically, the people who ran the library were just the only people who knew where the books were. You couldn't get a book without them bringing you to it, because everybody just came up with their own system.
I was going to say there's lots of Dewey Decimal Systems. They're just all very different.
Yes, everybody had their own.
I think of the Dewey Decimal System as the Google of its time. It was like, for the first time, you could actually access all the information quickly.
Yeah, in like a sensible way.
Right. It's not so much that the information has to exist, it's that you have to be able to access it in a way that makes sense.
It was Kitchen Sisters, which is a good podcast that I've been listening to for many years. They also talk about how, like, apparently Dewey was racist and all this other stuff.
You mean he was a white man in the 1800s?
Right, exactly, yeah.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
It is, yeah, important that we have that conversations, but sometimes when I'm listening or reading articles like that, I'm like, yeah, so he was like, you know, a person with money in 19th century America. Like, it's not really surprising that he was a racist. And like a raging racist, you know?
I don't think you have to qualify that with the date. You can just say he was someone with money in America, and you can pretty much go with raging racist.
Yeah, yeah. Cut all this.
No. All right, so back to the chapter. We find out that Eldrith, that she's the one who figured out it was in the Panarch's palace 2 days ago, that it's a ter'angreal. It looks like she did it all from research and being a Brown.
Yes. And if you forgot, the Black Ajah members are looking for the sad bracelets, as we say it. It's the Adam that can control a man.
The ones that end up in Semirog's hands, and she uses them on Rand.
And Rand uses the Dark One to beat the ter'angreal.
The Domination Band is its official term.
Bam! Didn't see that one coming, did you, Darkness? Use you against you. Yeah, Sorauko, the Rand Chokes Min chapter. Oh, God. My stomach still, like, turns a little when I even think about that chapter.
So this really is one of those chapters that just keeps going, because it's got, like, a whole bunch of perspective switches.
Yeah. Relay Race of Dark Friends.
So we're getting into sort of the final jump with back to Egeanin. Do you have anything else to say about the Black Ajah?
No. Even learned a thing. Did not realize the impudent servant was, did you say Mogedian?
Yep.
Awesome. I had no idea.
That's a subtle one. It's we do find out later there is a scene where Mogedian reveals herself, and Liandrin's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know." So you can backtrack on that with a reread, but it's a small point, and you could easily miss it. But I do like noticing in all the impudent servant quotes, and like she's not behaving and just walking where she's not supposed to, and like the arrogance of it. It's because she's just fucking forsaken.
Hilarious. I have a bit of a read. This is a cool bit into Seanchan culture. Yeah, pretty much just that, and then we're almost done with this.
Yeah, we have an interaction between Egeanin and this Seeker, both of which are pretty significant Seanchan characters. Is this the same Seeker? Which Seeker is this? Is this the one who's later interacts with Matt and is tracking down?
Yes, I believe it's the same guy.
Yeah, Seekers and listeners are different. Listeners are more like just spies. They'll report back anything you say, but they don't like do the hunting. The Seekers are actually out there hunting down.
The listeners are, I think, like exactly what Draconic Entity said. They're just like eyes and ears. They're not the property of the Empress or anything like that. They're just people who are paid to listen. Or, yeah, that's part of their job or whatever. And then there are the Seekers, and, well, you know what? I'll read this little sequence, and I think this explains it quite a bit.
Go for it.
Egeanin knew she was not alone as soon as she stepped into her small house by the kitchen door. But she dropped her mask and the jute bag carelessly on the table and walked over to where a bucket of water stood beside the brick fireplace. As she bent to take the copper ladle, her right arm darted into a low hollow where 2 bricks had been removed behind the bucket. She spun erect, a small crossbow in her hand. No more than a foot long, it had little power or range, but she always kept it drawn. The dark stain tipping the sharp steel bolt would kill in a heartbeat. If the man leaning casually in the corner saw the crossbow, he gave no outward sign. He was a pale-haired and blue-eyed, in his middle years, and good-looking, if too slender for her taste. Clearly he had watched her cross the narrow yard through the iron-grilled window beside him. "Do you think that I threaten you?" he said after a moment. She recognized the familiar accents of home, but she did not lower the crossbow. "Who are you?"
More dangerous.
For answer, he dipped 2 fingers carefully into his belt pouch. Apparently, he could see after all, and brought out something small and flat. She motioned him to lay it on the table, and back up again. Only after he was back in the corner did she move close enough to pick up what he had set there. Never taking her eyes or the crossbow away from him, she lifted it up where she could see. A small ivory plaque bordered in gold, engraved with a raven and a tower. The raven's eyes were black sapphires. A raven, symbol of the imperial family. The tower of ravens, a symbol of imperial justice. Normally, this would be enough, she told him, but we are far from Seanchan, in a land where the bizarre is almost commonplace. What other proof can you offer? Smiling with silent amusement, he removed his coat, unlaced his shirt, and stripped it off. On either shoulder was the tattoo of raven and tower. Most seekers for the truth bore ravens as well as the tower, but not even someone who dared steal a seeker's plaque would have himself marked so. To wear the ravens was to be the property of the imperial family. There was an old story of a fool young lord and lady who had themselves tattooed while drunk some 300 years gone. When the Empress learned of it, she brought them to the Court of the 9 Moons and set them to scrubbing floors. This fellow might be one of their descendants. The mark of the raven was forever. "My apologies, Seeker," she said, setting the crossbow down. "Why are you here?" She did not ask a name. Any he gave might or might not be his.
So the tower on his shoulder, is that not one of the Towers of Midnight? Is that the name of what the Seanchan call them? Tower of Ravens.
The tower is the symbol of imperial justice. But yeah, big black towers covered in ravens, or whatever, and it's where justice is dealt from. And if you're important enough to get called there, right, they don't just kill you for disobeying or displeasing the Empress. They put you in a silk bag and hang you over the side until you die.
Ooh, fun. So this brings me back to one of my favorite off-the-wall pet theories. So forgive me if I speculate here for a minute. And take this with a grain of salt that it's probably wrong. The Crystal Throne is a compulsion device for the Seanchan Empress. This is a theory I've sort of floated before. And we know that we have never had a traitor in the Seekers through the entire history of the Empire. I have to wonder if perhaps the tattoos some way link the Seekers to the Crystal Throne, forcing them to be loyal in a compulsion-like way. And that's why the tattoos are forever.
I mean, I would think so, because if the Crystal Throne, and I just totally buy your theory now, that it's kind of been part of our Watt Spoilers canon since the beginning, but if the Crystal Throne is a compulsion device, what's the word for it again?
Binding chair?
Oh, binding chair. So if the Crystal Throne is a binding chair, then anytime you induct someone into the Seekers, I almost said Seekers for the Truth. That's not their name. Doesn't matter. Anytime you bring someone into this elite group, you could just have them swear to the Empress, or the Empress will say, like, this is your job and you will do this, that, and the other thing, and you will never do these things, and then they can't.
Right.
They literally cannot disobey.
So perhaps the tattoo and the oath go together, sort of like swearing on the oath rod?
You take, or, you get laid down on the ground and tattooed, and then they bring you in front of the Empress, and she's like, here's the deal, and then that's the deal until you die.
Exactly.
It works perfectly. So not that, like in Egeanin's story, not that prevents someone from getting the tattoos, but if you were so foolish to get yourself so tattooed and then got noticed, you would then just simply be considered part of the Empress's property.
Right.
You are now hers. So not a good idea.
So either way, culture, whether it's binding with the power or not, you are now owned by the Empress. So deal with it.
And so we see here this Seeker who does show up later. I forget his name.
Oh, Moore.
Almarat
Moore.
Oh, I was right. It is Seeker for the Truth.
Yeah, it is.
I corrected myself before because there's also the White Cloaks. The White Cloak Truth Seeker? Are they just the same?
The hand that seeks the truth?
Oh, the hand.
Because I do not think this is the guy who was protecting Tuon. This is the other one who sort of makes up the whole conspiracy.
Right, he's trying to put things together, and he's kind of near Tuon, but their plot lines never cross as far as I can remember.
Right.
He does attack Tom at some point.
Well, he thinks Tom is the mastermind behind it all when it's actually Matt. And he thinks it's all like, he thinks Tom is a White Tower agent. He like makes up this whole elaborate story that's like,
It's actually like, it's like really close to the truth from what I can remember. Like, he's getting a lot right, but he's getting a lot wrong.
He's getting a lot of the details right, but he's forcing it into a narrative that just doesn't make sense.
Right. Tom's a agent of the White Tower, and actually he's just kind of a volunteer helper of a apprentice to the White Tower.
I mean, partially it makes sense because, like, a lot of what happened because of Matt's luck and happened, you know, beyond all odds. It should not have happened that way. Like, he couldn't have just randomly kidnapped the Seanchan Empress. No way he could have done that without planning. And so in a way, like, his theories are so convoluted because he has to come up with, like, rationale for Matt's luck. And there's just no way to do that without understanding what Matt is and what he's Ta'Viren is and what he's doing to the pattern. And as far as I can tell, Ta'Viren is a myth in Seanchan culture. They believe in the omens, but Tuon makes fun of Matt for claiming to be Ta'Viren. She's like, "Oh, you and your silly myths."
So, I mean, other than the part that I read where the Seeker talks to Egeanin, Seeker says, "I'm just tracking everyone's progress here. There has been some embarrassment over the return of Sul'dam deserters. I hope that when you find them, you don't tell anyone. Otherwise, bad things might happen to you," essentially, is the implication.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that there's one locked in the basement this whole time.
Yes. Which she's worried about in a moment after he leaves.
I would assume she's worried the whole time. She's like, "Oh, crap, did he find the girl?" Like, as soon as he walked in, as soon as she saw the plaque, she's got to think that he's arresting her for the girl in the basement.
Oh, shit. Yeah, because she's found one of the deserter Sul'dam.
And she should have either sent her back or killed her at this point. She's been there for, like, weeks. So if it was discovered that she had this woman as a prisoner with the collar around her neck, and that's what's sent her for a loop, is she put the collar around her neck and figured out that, oh my God, Sul'dam can channel. I was tasked with collecting Adom, and I was tasked with collecting Sul'dam, and it turns out that the Adom hold the Sul'dam. And that's kind of puts a wrench into the whole structure of the empire.
Right.
And so she wants to make sure that this isn't just a fluke, that this isn't just one woman who slipped through, that it's actually something that that will hold all Sul'dam. And that's where she ends up becoming friends with Nynaeve and Elaine, because she wants to learn more about Aes Sedai and channeling.
So eventually the Seeker leaves after just kind of warning Egeanin. And she goes down in the basement and checks on her prisoner, who is one of the captured Sul'dam, as we said.
And lamenting the lack of coffee in this world, which I think we all would if there was no coffee available.
Yeah, I noticed the Seanchan do talk about that a lot, which is cute because I get it. Go to the place like, you could have every kind of tea you could ever want, but not a drop of coffee. I'd be like, oh, this is going to take some getting used to.
She's making she's taking like Tremonking Black and using a lot of it, and soaking it for a long time, trying to get it like as caffeinated as possible, as black as possible. Oh, speaking of which, I want some coffee.
I could kind of go for one too, but it's 8 p.m. Can't be doing that right now. I basically just have the readout after this. There's not much happens in the exchange between Egeanin and the captured Sul'dam.
Nothing we haven't really talked about, maybe other than they've been friends for a long time, but Egeanin still barely sees her as human now.
Yeah. Also, as she's going down to the basement to check on her prisoner, Egeanin has the thought that I just kind of wanted to throw out there that Seekers are known to... Basically, she's worried that the Seeker picked a lock, went down there, saw what was there, came back up, locked the lock, and then waited for her to see what she would say. So she's like worried about this whole scenario.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. But it doesn't... Turns out that... Well, assuming that this woman is telling the truth, Bethamin is telling the truth, which
No
I
one
assume
came
she
down.
is, because otherwise the Seeker would have taken different action.
Probably.
He didn't discover her. Remember Team Walk By?
Yeah.
Just a little piece of evidence here where it says, the early testings across all Seanchan found every girl who had a spark of channeling in her. Each was struck from the rolls of citizens, struck from family records and taken away to become colored Domine. The same testing found the girls who could learn to wear the bracelets of the Sul'dam. So at that point, those testings are going on at the same time. Just a point that it is that they're doing the test at the same time. It's not like they go and test all the girls for Domine and then come back and test them all for Sul'dam.
Gotcha.
They may be doing different tests, but they're at least doing them at the same time.
I'm glad you're keeping your eye on that.
Yeah, and I think, again, what I think is happening is they walk the girls by a Domine one by one, and if they have the spark, they're going to sense that and pull them out of line. And if not, they'll let them try on the bracelet. And if that works, they become Sul'dam.
Mm.
So walk by first and then try on the bracelet. Because if you did in the reverse order, you'd have people try on the bracelet.
Everybody would be Domane.
And then, they'd all be Sul'dam. And then they'd walk by and they'd realize that Domane can be Sul'dam. Although I wonder if they know that. I wonder if they know that Domane can be Sul'dam. They're certainly finding out that Sul'dam can be Domane, but I don't know if they know the reverse is true.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Egeanin felt very tired climbing the stairs and locking the door again. She wanted some tea herself, but the little the Seeker had left was cold, and she did not feel like brewing more. Instead, she sat down and pulled the Adam out of the jute bag. To her, it was only finely jointed silver. She could not use it, and it could not harm her unless somebody hit her with it. Even linking herself with an Adam that far, denying its ability to control her, was enough to send a shiver down her spine. Women who could channel were dangerous animals rather than people. It had been they who broke the world. They must be controlled, or they would turn everyone into their property. That was what she had been taught. What had been taught in Seanchan for 1,000 years. Strange that seemed not to have happened here. No, that was dangerous, foolish line of thought. Tucking the Adam back into her bag, she cleaned the tea things to settle her mind. She liked tidiness, and there was small satisfaction in making the kitchen so. Before she realized it, she was brewing a pot of tea for herself. She did not want to think about Bethamin, and that was dangerously foolish too. Settling herself back at the table, she stirred honey into a cup of tea as black as she could make it. Not cough, but it would do. Despite her denials, despite her pleas, Bethamin could channel. Could other Sul'dam? Was that why the High Lady Suroth wanted those left behind at Falmouth killed? It was unthinkable. Impossible. The yearly testings all across Seanchan found every girl who had the spark of channeling in her. Each was struck from the rolls of citizens, struck from family records, taken away to become collared Domane. The same testings found the girls who could learn to wear the bracelet of the Sul'dam. No woman escaped being tested each year until she was old enough that she would have begun channeling, if the spark was there. How could even one girl be taken for Sul'dam when she was Domane? Yet, there was Bethamin. There was Bethamin in the basement, held by an Adam as by an anchor. One thing was certain. The possibilities here were potentially deadly. This involved the blood, and Seekers, maybe even the Crystal Throne. Would the High Lady Suroth dare keep the knowledge of this sort from the Empress? A mere ship captain could die screaming for a misplaced frown in that company, or find herself property for a whim. She had to know more if she hoped to avoid the death of 10,000 tears. To begin with, that meant spreading more money to Gelb and other Faraday skulkers like him, finding more Sul'dam and seeing if the Adam held them. Beyond that, she was sailing uncharted reefs with no linesman in the bow. Touching the crossbow, still laying there with its lethal bolt, she realized that something else was certain. She was not going to let the Seekers kill her. Not just to help the High Lady Suroth keep a secret, perhaps not for any reason. It was a thought shiveringly close to treason, but it would not go away. And that's that.
She does come close to treason, and I think that's why she ends up with a new name of Llewellyn Shipless, the name of the woman she ruined.
Love it. I saw a quote from RJ recently online when someone was asking him, like, oh, is the Sasara like this? And basically his response was something like, in order to tell you any more, in order to tell you anything about what the Sasara is other than its name, I'll need a note from your mother, a note from your doctor saying that you have a strong enough heart, and it was something like that. But he went on for a moment. It's like you need special permissions, and of course it's just a sexy dance. But if you refuse to describe it, then we have to imagine it, and that is where a lot of the power is.
My imagination? Oh yeah, I can imagine some sexy dancing. Tell me about the new apartment.
So me and Julia moved in with each other after obsessively shopping for like half a year, and we found a really nice place. It's the top half of the old Victorian building that's been converted into a duplex. There's 2 bedrooms so that we can both have like workspaces, because we're just obviously sleeping in one bedroom and the other one's just like an office. Yeah, geez, it's the first week, so still doing all the boring stuff like turning on the electric, gas, and internet, and I managed to get CenturyLink and not Comcast internet. I got that handled today.
Jealous.
Of course, they did spend like 10 minutes of my time trying to sell me a phone and cable TV, which I was like, what I really wanted to be like is, listen, man, just listen a second. I'm a millennial. I don't own a TV. I've never paid for cable. And whatever show package you're offering under CenturyLink, like, I can just torrent all that stuff. You're not offering me anything that I can't have for free. So can we just move forward? All I want is the internet.
I'm going to use your internet connection to steal your content. That's basically what you're telling me.
Wait a minute. Buy the internet to buy things? I don't understand. No, I'm not that bad. I do pay for a lot of stuff these days, but not cable.
I do. I mean, I try and pay for Netflix and watch things there first, or on YouTube or wherever it's like available. But if it's not available,
yeah, nah. And they have their own they're trying to sell me on their own I don't know what to call it. It's like their version of Netflix, and they were like, you can have that, and it's bundled with a bunch of stuff. And then, in my head, I'm like, okay, so basically cable TV, but more modern. It's like, no, I don't need that, man.
It's still a ripoff.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, how's that tablet working out for you?
It's an extra screen that I don't use very much. It is cool that it shares my phone connection, so that if anything were to happen, it is also a phone. But it's just there. I knew it. I do need a new desk. I'm going to either, keep my eyes peeled for free piles or buy one.
Oh, yeah. Are you just using that table as like a kitchen table?
Yeah, because it's a much bigger space than we can actually furnish. In the office, there's nothing but a coffee table so far.
Well, you had almost nothing furniture-wise. It's like a few items. That's it.
Yeah.
And I know she had some more stuff, but I wasn't sure how much.
It's a really nice place. We'll have you over for dinner or something, and maybe this week, if you have time.
As we approach episode 200 very rapidly, because this will be 197 and 198 we're going to record tonight. So next recording, we should hit 200.
Nin, we definitely talked about that on the podcast when it happened.
Yeah, I brought up, I was like, dude, you've been hanging out with this female friend of yours a lot.
You guys official yet? It's like,
I get to ask that. You're like, no, we're not dating. No.
Well, I like to tell this story now, but at the time we hung out a couple of times, and it was quickly kind of romantic, and there was that surge, and then at some point she was like, I don't think I want to date anyone right now. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's fine. And then we just hung out, more or less platonically for a couple more months before she changed her mind.
You were pre-dating dating.
Right. I still tease her about that. That's what dating is, right? When you don't really know someone that well, so you just kind of hang out sometimes and talk and stuff. That is what dating is.
You guys were dating by the time of the eclipse, right?
No, that was like, we were official like right after that. That's actually what spurred me later to like pursue a little more, because we had that conversation that I mentioned. And then after that, I was like, I'm not going to be the weird guy and like continuously pursue her, even though she's like told me that she's not really interested. And then she asked me later, like, hey, are we still going to the eclipse? And I was like, you want to sleep in my tent? I didn't see that coming. So I just thought that wasn't going to happen now. When she was like, no, I want to go. And then I was like, oh, okay. So you do want to hang out. All right. And then after that, we hung out. It was, I don't know, a bunch.
Man. Yeah. That's awesome. And I guess the other big news is we are officially panelists at JordanCon.
Oh, yeah. We haven't said anything yet. I got to say something on social media, because that's exciting.
It's very exciting. Well, we have at least 3 panels at this point, 1 each day, I think. So we're just planning that out. We may add a few more, and just depending how things work out. But yeah, we're totally stoked. We'll be on the schedule. We'll have buttons, or probably stickers actually, once I order them, in the swag bags. So everyone will get a Watt Spoilers sticker.
Oh, right. And that's and just to make sure I understand, that's if you come to JordanCon, you get a Watt sticker, essentially, like a Watt Spoiler sticker. Yeah. Like the what do you call it? Party favor bag for everyone, where that you get when you just buy a ticket.
This is JordanCon.
Yeah, we spent an hour or so on the phone with one of the organizers the other day to schedule us all in. So that's all set.
And we are donating another one of those an inscribed cast iron pan to the auction. Proceeds go to the Mayo Foundation. So yeah, we'll be picking one of those up. So if you want one of those cast iron pans that you saw Sarah get, and you're going to be at JordanCon, bring your wallet. Bid that sucker up. Help sick kids. I think that's what the Mayo Clinic does.
Oh, thank you, Nin. I've listened to that several times now since it happened, and we joke about it on the podcast a bunch, but that was me and Robert Jordan's cousin drinking box wine out of red Solo cups at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I can't believe it came out sounding as good as it did. Literally drinking wine out of Solo cups with this.
I mean, and he was dressed to the nines. I mean, that's the thing, is like he's this older gentleman, and like there's some older folks there. It's not like the, Wheel of Time is exclusively younger people, but it's mostly 20s, 30s, 40s. And he's 60s, 7. I'm not sure exactly how old he is.
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
60s,
Robert Jordan's age. And he was all dressed up, and he seemed so happy to be there, and just like have everyone be like, "Oh, we love Robert Jordan." He's like, "Yeah, he loved his brother too, and he's so happy to see other people also share that love, I think. But he's also clearly like, he comes from a working class background, and so he sort of got he had some things to say that were pretty funny. And
yeah, he was a cool dude. I remember really enjoying talking to him. He was very easy to talk to. Of course, wine helps.
See, now the goal is to get Harriet on, because I've been told she'll be there.
Oh, that would be really good.
Or at least get Robert Jordan's cousin back. What was his name? Does anyone remember?
Roger? Wilson? Where am I getting Roger from?
Should have an up-and-coming episode with the White Tower Girls.
Oh, I've been looking forward to that.
Yeah. We should see if we can get him on for episode 200.
That would be great.
Since that's coming up. I'll have to, because that would be 38, 39. Really, so that would be like chapter 41 among the Tuathwan. Could be a Perrin Fail. That would actually be it would be interesting to have them on a Perrin Fail chapter, just because like I feel like that we could get deep into the gender dynamic.
That would be really cool to kind of do a spin-off thing. I would love to have them on and just do like a episode about gender in the Wheel of Time or something. It doesn't even have to be like a...
No, that too, yeah. Did you listen to they recently did a crossover with Everybody Hates Rand that I listened to, where they had an awful lot of opinions about gender in the Wheel of Time. Most of which I agreed with, some of which I did not.
Well, that's what it's all about, I think.
Just because I feel like there was a couple of times they brought up a point, and they're like, yeah, I can't think of any examples of that. And I'm like, I can think of 5! So I wanted to like yell it through them. I had the experience of being on the other side of a podcast where you aren't in the room and the hosts get it wrong and you want to yell at them through the podcast. So just so you know, everybody out there, I do it too. I do it too.
Oh, I guess I can say I think next week will be the first episode that we try to record remotely, which is something we've been talking about for a long time. We just want to make sure that's possible, that we can do that if in the future we ever can't be in the same room but can't stop doing the podcast.
As with anything else, it just doesn't make sense if we're both at home to one of us get in the car and drive to the other place just to record. If we could just sit down at our computers in our studios. And
as it is, we only live 2.5 miles from each other or something.
Which would be easier if my car hadn't gotten stolen today.
Oh, Jesus, yeah, I forgot about that.
And yes, everybody, it's the same car that was stolen before. Basically, I'm sure someone borrowed it, like they borrowed it last time just to go, because it was raining, rainy and cold last night, and they probably took it to get some fast food again. Probably even the same person. But I didn't think they could steal it because the battery has been dead for a couple of days, and I've been meaning to jump it and take it to get the battery replaced. So I'm like, I don't even know how the hell they started it, much less stole it.
It's so absurd.
It is. It just seems, or like maybe the battery over time it had enough charge in it that it somehow worked that time.
Obscure, they just ditched it like 5 blocks from where they took it from last time, which is actually a story I've heard from a couple of people in Portland that, people just want to get out of the rain or whatever and they have no other resources, so they steal a car for the night and then ditch it, and then the cops eventually find it because it's reported stolen and just tell you where it is and you go get it, I guess.
A rolling start is it's an automatic, so I'm not sure a rolling start would have worked. But they probably could have thrown it in neutral and got it going down the hill. Because it was a pretty steep hill that it was at the top of.
Yeah, and that's fairly common, like I was saying, because Seth has a older but desirable car, so people know how to steal, like, if he had a Toyota Corolla, similar kind of idea.
The cops say you can just basically file a key down so it's blunt and it will turn the ignition, which I believe because you should see my key. It's so old, it's so badly worn down. It's shocking that it still starts the car. It's shocking, really, that this car, and that tells me that basically any piece of metal that's vaguely key shaped in the Subaru key. And so what people do is they just get any old Subaru key and file down the points, and then they can just start. That's why those old Subarus are so easy to steal, because the keys work.
For Endgame, I had a friend in high school who had like a 87 Ford Bronco or something like that, and it was so beat up and old, you didn't need a key to start it. You could just grab the like circular piece around where the ignition key goes and turn that, and the whole thing would turn.
One key to rule them all, one key to start them, one king to open the car and in the darkness steal it.
It's funny because that's exactly what happened.
Yep. But, I assume it'll pop back up somewhere in the city. The cops will find it. They'll call me. And this time I'll actually buy a club and then it won't get stolen again. What I'm worried about is that they're going to call me to come get it, and I'm going to come get it, and it won't start because the goddamn battery is dead. And if I can't take it...
I'm sorry. I don't know why that's so funny.
If I can't take it within an hour, they automatically call a tow truck, and then I have to pay like hundreds of dollars to get it towed and out of impound. So that's what's going to suck. I should go buy a battery so I can just show up with a fucking battery and swap it out. Anyway. You know what? I bet the cop will jump me.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah. Unless maybe they replaced the battery for me. Someone stole the car and was like, "Oh, the battery's dead." And they we're like, "Damn, I'll just get that fixed for him." I'll come back to a brand new battery.
Thanks for finding the car. Why don't you just change the battery to a new one while you're at it? Good job, buddy. Knew I was paying my taxes for some reason.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?